Also others saying specific to the protest, "I can't breathe," which references George Floyd's last words. The property owner will end up being the one responsible for taking graffiti down, and that raises a question: is the graffiti vandalism? Is it an effective way to spread the message? A lot of talk about those messages desperate to be heard this morning. And this morning, we're joined live with Kansas City Mayor Quinton Lucas. Mayor Lucas, thank you for joining us. You were there yesterday talking to protesters. That imposed curfew from Sunday night has expired this morning. Are there any plans for another curfew?
You know, I don't look to do another curfew. However, we'll do whatever we can to keep the community safe. And by the way, the community is not just property owners. The community is individuals. And I'm proud of the fact that as compared to Saturday, last night, Sunday night, we had thousands of people there who by and large were there peacefully and by and large went home, went away at the end of protest time. I think the type of people that we saw who were burning up news vans, trying to break things, trying to cause destruction, are not trying to listen to the message of really what the moment's about and creating better equality for all in our community.
Mr. Mayor, this is Taylor here on the plaza this morning watching the cleanup. I want to ask you about over the weekend when you said that you didn't feel like tear gas was appropriate to use on peaceful protesters, but yet again it was used last night after 8:30 when people were not dispersing. What's your reaction and what's your statement to both law enforcement and protesters this morning after you saw how it changed last night?
You know, two very distinct messages. One, I say that peaceful actually matters. What you can't do is, you know, throw Molotov cocktails. What you can't do is start throwing things not just at police officers, but at journalists, which we saw last night. I mean, those are the sorts of things that are not peaceful, and those are the sorts of things that escalate situations. I want to say actually thank you, by and large, to the Kansas City Police Department. Last night, I think we saw a very volatile situation, and by and large, we saw very few injuries to civilians. We saw very few injuries to officers as well. But we saw more than we needed to. And so I think what I want to say is thank you for holding the peace for almost everybody who was involved. For those few people, and I guess you could use the phrase bad apples that were out in the crowd, don't come back. We don't need that distorting what this moment is. We're talking about how we can have better Black community police relations. And frankly, I'll just say it was interesting for me as a Black man, seeing a bunch of non-Black people that are throwing things at folks in a protest that's about a Black man who lost his life and trying to find a way for more people in our community to actually feel safe. So, you know what? I mean, what I would say is let's try to keep this message on point. Let's try to keep this message about how we make our community better, not about just, you know, what rioters are trying to do by breaking glass at a cupcake shop on the plaza. Like that's going to make a lick of difference in the world.
Mayor, you talked about not wanting those messages again last night and this morning to get lost in the face of talking about the unrest that we saw last night. A couple of the tangible things that one of the organizers told us that they are really pushing for, some short-term policy changes they'd like to see would be local control of the police department, also accountability for the police department coming in the way of body cams. And we know that the police have said, been kind of a back and forth about, well, we need direct funding for that. Where does that go from here? Have you already started those conversations again?
We have those conversations all the time. Here's the deal for folks who want to get into the bureaucratic details, because the revolution isn't actually just on the street. Sometimes it's back in the office. The Kansas City, Missouri police budget is about $240 million. Last year, the city council, myself, approved a $10 million increase in the budget that still didn't actually, I guess, have sufficient funding for body cams. Every political actor in Kansas City, your mayor, your city council, support having body cams on our police officers. We believe that our $240 million budget provides significant support to help fund that. The work that we're going to have to do is getting the department to be part of that too. In terms of accountability, I absolutely believe in accountability, but I'll tell you this about local control. Minneapolis had local control. St. Louis has local control. New York City has local control. And all of those, Ferguson had local control. In all those situations, we didn't see that being an end to police brutality. We didn't see that being an end to Black community relations, in particular with the police department, and Black community fears of a police department. So I'll just say it's not a panacea. It's not going to just change everything in a day. I absolutely believe about police accountability, but if we're talking about accountability, let's actually talk about how we do that. Not just talk about changing systems and act like that's going to make the world different.
Mayor Quentin Lucas from Kansas City joining us this morning live. Mayor, we appreciate your time this morning. We appreciate your answers, and thank you for taking the time to speak to us this morning.